content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, sensitive topics, and explicit language that may be triggering, offensive, or sensitive subjects to some viewers and listeners. Discretion is advised. The purpose of this podcast is to explore and discuss true crime cases for entertainment and educational purposes only. This podcast does not intend to glorify or sensationalize crime, but rather aims to analyze and understand the complexities of human behavior and the criminal justice system. We encourage listeners to approach this content with empathy, critical thinking, respect for the victims and their families. Some disappearances make sense, and then there are the others, the ones where people vanish like they were just erased from the world. No footprints, no blood, no struggle, just gone. Local whispers about creatures in the tree line, eyes that shine where no eyes should be, and big shapes too wrong to belong to any animal on record. Authorities blame the weather, wildlife, or just bad decisions, but the families left behind, they know something else was out there. Tonight we step into those cases that just don't add up. The encounters, the creatures, the crimes no one wants to admit might be real. Whatever took them or caused all this chaos for these families and communities, it's still out there. So with that being said, it's time to start the show. Let's hit it. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. I am your host, Winnie Schrader. Well, we've been talking about a lot of missing people and cold cases and things like that, but obviously we know it was done by another human being. But what about these mysterious disappearances and things like that where there's no explanation, there was no evidence of anybody else being there, there's no evidence of a struggle, just the person vanished or abducted by something unworldly. So I wanted to kind of dive into those to have a little fun. So let's start diving into some of these stories where it's cryptid creatures being seen and damaging property or hurting somebody or somebody out there, and there was weird stuff in the area like huge trees down and ripped apart stuff, and it just does not look like any human. It looked like titans were probably fighting there. But those are very interesting too. And it's like how much credence can you give to these people who have these stories? And you always have those town locals that are the lunatic because they saw, little green bed running across the field and mutilated cows along the way. And instead of being taken seriously, they become the town nutball. It's kind of cool to dive into these and how some of them are very similar in nature. So let's start off with kind of go to the eastern side of the Midwest, and that's Loveland, Ohio, where the amphibians there seem to be getting out of control. The Loveland Frogman Incident. Date March 3rd, 1972. Location Loveland, Ohio. The night was colder than it should have been for early spring in Loveland, Ohio. The kind of cold that makes the quiet feel heavier. Officer Ray Shockey was on patrol cruising the dark stretch of Riverside Drive, headlights slicing through the mist rolling off the Little Miami River. It was just after midnight, the hour when small towns go still, only the strange things come out. Now, Shockey expected the usual, a stray dog, a speeding teenager, maybe a raccoon rummaging through trash. What he didn't expect was the figure standing on the side of the road. He spotted it just ahead, something tall, enough to stand upright, but still crouched. hunched as if it were studying the gravel shoulder. Its skin reflected the headlights in the slick, wet sheen of it. At first glance, he thought it was a person until it wasn't. When the creature turned toward him, Shockey felt his breath catch. It had the build of a man, but the face wasn't human at all. Wide mouth, bulging, lidless eyes, a ridge down the center of its head. The thing looked like it had crawled out of the river or out of some prehistoric nightmare. He slammed the brakes. The creature froze. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then it bolted. But it didn't run like a man. It ran with a spring-loaded rubbery speed bouncing board toward a guardrail. Shockey watched, stunned, as the creature leapt effortlessly over the metal railing and disappeared down the embankment toward the riverbank, splashing into the water below. His heart was pounding. Shockey radioed for backup, but when the officers searched the area, the creature was gone. What they did find, though, were long, deep scratch marks across the railing, as if something heavy and slick had vaulted over it. The department brushed it off. It was reported as a large animal, a misidentified fugitive, or something rational. But the town wasn't done. 2 weeks later, another officer, Mark Matthews, encountered the same creature around the same stretch of road. This time, it was crouched in the grass near a bridge. Matthews approached, gun drawn, calling out. The creature didn't flee. Instead, it stood fully upright. 5 feet tall, muscular, and reptilian. Matthews fired. The creature let out a guttural croak, almost like a scream, and staggered toward the river before vanishing into the night. No body, no blood, no tracks that ever made sense. 2 officers, independent sightings, same creature. And Loveland, Ohio, has never quite shaken it. Some say it's a mutant, others swear it's a cryptid native to the river valley. A few whisper it's something not of this world at all. But Officer Shockey swore one thing for the rest of his life. Whatever he saw that night, it was not human. Oh my God. Can you imagine, like, all of a sudden you see Kermit the Frog just stand up on the side of the road? I mean, what could that have been? I mean, if anything, I would think it would have been like an alien. They say those reptilian aliens, like, I guess it could be that, unless we do have some type of cryptid frogman. If you've heard any frogman stories in other parts of the country, please email me at Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. And do that with every story we talk about tonight, because it'd be interesting to see if there are other stories out there that may have not been officially reported, but have been talked down through generations and family. So yeah, if you've heard of any of these cases, or one that you've heard of similar, please email me. I'd love to talk to you about it, maybe get you on a show and we'll showcase that case. So up next, we are going to go to New Mexico in 1948. What happened then? Well, the Forrest J. Irwin fatal UFO crash happened, and we are going to talk about it. New Mexico in 1948 was a desert full of secrets, the kind of place where the government built new worlds in the sand, where the military moved in silence, and where the sky itself betrayed strange lights that no one could explain. It was also a place where people died in ways that never quite made sense, like Officer Forrest J. Irwin. Irwin was a patrolman out of a small New Mexico town, the kind of cop who didn't scare easily. He did serve during the war. He did see some bad things, but nothing prepared him for what happened on that cold March night when the radio crackled with reports of a brilliant light descending over the desert north of town. At first, he thought it was a plane in distress, maybe a military craft off course. The entire region buzzed with military experiments, and crashes happened more than anyone could admit. So Irwin did what any officer would do. He sped toward the light. But as he rounded a bend in the desert highway, he realized it wasn't a plane at all. Hovering low over the Mesa Desert was a glowing oval-shaped craft silently pulsing with bluish-white lights. It moved too smoothly, too purposefully. No wings, no engines, no sound, just a whisper of energy that made the hair on his arms stand on end. Irwin's cruiser rattled as he accelerated. The craft started drifting, not away, but towards him, almost as if it was curious. The last thing he said over the radio was this:
"I'm going after it. It's not like anything I've ever seen."
Minutes later, the patrol car left the road. The crash site made no sense. The vehicle was crushed against a rocky embankment as if it had been forced off the road, not simply just wrecked. The skid mark showed a hard swerve, but no evidence of braking, no attempt to slow down. Witnesses miles away reported seeing the strange craft ascend straight upward seconds after Irwin's car collided. Some say it moved like it was yanked into the sky. When investigators arrived, they found something even stranger. His body didn't match the crash. Irwin's injuries weren't consistent with the vehicle's damage. Internal trauma without corresponding external wounds, electromagnetic burns along his hands, pupils dilated as if he'd seen something blinding him before death. His uniform bore a faint chemical odor that lab techs couldn't identify. The officer report called it an accident. Off the record, the sheriff told locals to keep this quiet. But people do talk, and soon the story started to spread among the state police, military personnel, desert towns with more rumors than people. Some said Irwin was run off the road by the craft. Others believed he was caught in a blast of energy. One of the military didn't want the public to know about. The Air Force arrived within hours, confiscating evidence and sealing files. They interviewed witnesses in unmarked cars. They collected soil samples from the crash site. They took the uniform Irwin died in and never returned it. The file remains thin, intentionally thin. But here's what's certain. Officer Forrest J. Irwin died chasing something in that sky that night. Something wasn't human, it wasn't a plane, and it wasn't meant to be there. And the desert still remembers that night, a silent road, a glowing craft, and a man who followed it into the dark and never came home. Oh my God. Oh, how awful. Like, he's doing his job. He sees something that's not supposed to be there. That's their job. He goes after it. This is what happens to him, and they still want to keep this quiet. There's this kind of danger out there. We should know about it, you think? Maybe if he had a little insight, maybe he wouldn't have gone after it at all. But yeah, how scary is that? And we had that similar incident that Dave talked about in the documentary that he did, The Outer Edge, the Warren UFO incident, where same kind of thing happened, where the officers spotted a light off in the sky and followed it, and his car got damaged. His clock stopped. His antenna was bent back, and there was no explanation of it. He had lost time. I mean, it was nuts. It was nuts what happened. So please check out the Warren UFO incident. It's a fascinating story, and they have it up in Warren, Minnesota. They actually have his car on display there, and here you can see Dave standing next to the car that he discussed in his documentary. So go check it out. No, this one I've never heard of, but I found it very interesting because we are going to talk about the Braxton County Green Monster in Flatwoods in 1952. The night of September 12th, 1952 began like any other in the small town of Flatwoods, West Virginia. Quiet, cool, and still. Kids played outside until the mountain air turned sharp, and the sky hung low with the kind of darkness that feels too heavy for a town so small. But then a fireball came, streaking across the sky in a blazing arc. It tore over the rooftops, vanished behind the trees on a nearby hill. Dozens of people saw it, bright, flaming fast. Some thought it was a meteor, others thought it could have been a plane crash. But three boys, Ed and Fred May, and their friend Tommy Heyer, weren't content with guessing. So they ran to the May house, breathless, begging Mrs. Kathleen May to come see. She grabbed a flashlight, called a local National Guardsman, and together the small group climbed the hill through the dark. None of them were ready for what they found. As they reached the clearing, a metallic smell filled the air, sharp and chemical, like burning metal and something rotten underneath. A thick mist clung in the air, choking them, stinging their eyes. A guardsman raised his flashlight, and then the beam landed on it. A towering figure, 10 foot tall, hovering just above the ground. Its body was shaped like an inverted ace of spades, dark and metallic. Its head was round and glowing within, like molten metal trapped behind a visor. Two piercing reddish orange eyes burned through the haze. Its lower half wasn't legs at all, but a long pleated skirt-like structure that flared outward as it floated. Its hands, if they were hands, ended in a long claw-like extension. And when the flashlight beam hit its face, the creature emitted a sharp, high-pitched hiss. The group turned and fled, tripping, choking, scrambling down the hill in terror. Well, no kidding. If I saw that, I'd have to change my pants. Behind them, though, something massive moved through the bush. They didn't want to look back. Back in town, the witnesses became violently ill. Burning throats, vomiting, irritating skin, temporary paralysis of facial muscles. Doctors couldn't explain it. The symptoms mimicked exposure to something chemical or radioactive, something not found on West Virginia hills. Police investigated but not found nothing except scorched earth, crushed brush, and lingering smell of metal and sulfur. Nearby residents reported seeing UFOs earlier in the evening, bright lights, spheres, and a craft that hovered silently before shooting off the impossible speed. The military arrived quietly, telling locals it was just a meteor, just an imagination, just hysteria. But that story just refused to die, because everyone present that night described the same thing. A machine-like entity, a creature encased in armor, and being not from here, injured, disoriented, or sent with purpose. Some people believe the green monster was never a creature at all, but a UFO occupant wearing a protective suit, a survivor of a crash wandering in the hills in confusion. Others insist it was mechanical, a drone or a Renaissance device that malfunctioned. And a fewer whisper something older, something that is tagged to the land, the lights, and the strange sightings that still haunt the mountains. But the fact that still chills Flatwoods after 70 years is this. Whatever climbed that hill that night was not human. Whatever floated above the ground and hissed at the flashlight beam was not of this world, and whatever illness struck those witnesses was not an accident. It was contact. Brief, terrifying, unforgettable contact. A crime scene with no perpetrator, a witness report with no suspect, an encounter the government buried with a shrug. But for the people of Braxton County, the truth remains burned into memory. The monster was real. They saw it, and it was watching them long before they ever saw it. Whatever that thing was, that sounds terrifying. It's got like molten like things and going on in this home. Oh my gosh. And to know that that happened in 1952, and this is like at the height of like sci-fi stuff, comic books and things like that. I can't imagine what kids' imaginations were going through, and if they had to encounter that, that's like a sci-fi comic book coming to life right in front of your eyes. Ugh. Now this one is pretty cool because it was reported not just by some local in some small hick town in West Virginia. No. This was reported by the President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt. The Bowman Encounter, reported by Teddy Roosevelt. The Montana wilderness was vast and unforgiving in those days, a place where a man could vanish without anyone noticing until the snow melted and the wolves dragged what was left out in the open. But for Bowman and his trapping partner, the danger wasn't the cold or the predators, it was something else. Something that watched them from the trees. It began on the first night at the mountain pass. They set up a makeshift camp, built a small fire, and laid out their traps. Bauman remembered how still the forest felt, not silent, but listening, as if the entire valley was holding its breath. They woke the next morning to find their camp disturbed, not destroyed, not robbed or ransacked. Their packs were shoved around, their gear scattered. Something had rifled through everything with a strange, clumsy deliberation. Bauman first blamed a bear, but the tracks around the camp told a different story. They were too large for a man, too flat for a bear. barefoot impressions, but not human. His partner went pale.
This wasn't an animal,
he whispered. That night, the thing returned. Bauman heard it first. Heavy footfalls circling the camp, not charging, not sneaking, but pacing, studying. The creature walked on two legs, its breathing deep and ragged in the dark. When it pushed against the tent, Bauman felt a cold dread crawl up his spine. His partner fired a shot into the night, and whatever it was retreated into the trees with an unearthly scream that echoed for miles. They wanted to leave at dawn, but the trapping lines had already been set. Money was tight, and the wilderness didn't give second chances. They decided to stay one more night. The third morning, Bauman returned from checking traps to find the camp eerily quiet. Too quiet. The fire had burned itself out, the tools laid undisturbed. His partner's rifle leaned against the fallen log, untouched. Then he saw the body. Bauman's partner was sprawled near the trees. His neck snapped as if it had been twisted by something with enormous strength. The ground around him looked like a war zone. Deep footprints gouged into the earth, the same inhuman tracks they'd seen earlier. Branches were broken, crushed under tremendous weight, but no blood, no signs of a struggle. It was as if the creature ambushed him in a single brutal instance. Bauman backed away, heart pounding, unable to shake the feeling that the creature was still there, watching him from the shadows. He didn't even pack. He didn't even look back. He just ran. When he finally reached civilization days later, his clothes torn and his face hollow, Bauman told Roosevelt the story with conviction that didn't waver once. He wasn't a man prone to imagination. He wasn't a drunk, nor a braggart. He was a frontiersman, quiet, hardened, seasoned by the wild. Roosevelt believed him, and for decades the story lived on in a hushed tones among the hunters and trappers, not as legend, not as folklore, but as a warning. Because Bauman's partner wasn't killed by a bear, or a man, or anything that belonged in those woods. Bauman always said the creature that stalked them was something ancient, something that walked like a man but wasn't one, something that knew how to watch, how to hunt, and what it wanted, and how to kill. And the mountain pass where it happened? Locals still won't camp there alone. What do you do when you find your partner in that position? Like, what? His neck was snapped? Now, the only thing, other than having it be some weird creature in the woods, more than likely Sasquatch, would have been Bauman committed it himself. But according to the evidence that he said, it looked like a war zone there. So who knows? More than likely, I would put my money on Sasquatch. They were kind of in this house. I'm just saying. Hey, beautiful souls. Winnie Schrader here from Love and Lotus Tarot, your guide through the energy shifts, emotional waves, and the cosmic chaos we've all been feeling lately. I mean, let's be real for a second. The world feels loud right now, right? There's so much noise, so much tension, so much uncertainty. Between the news, social media, and just trying to keep up with life, it's easy to feel like you're stuck on this never-ending roller coaster that just won't slow down. But here's the thing. Even though we can't control the outside chaos, we can learn to navigate through it. And that's where I come in. I mean, lately, have you been feeling like everything is happening to you instead of for you? Are you finding it hard to stay grounded when everyone seems just as ungrounded as you are? Or maybe you've been questioning your direction, wondering if the path you are on still aligns with who you are becoming. If any of this hits home, this is for you. It's like we're all trying to move forward, but the universe keeps throwing us stupid curveballs. But here's your reminder, you are not powerless. So all you got to do is reach out and book a reading with me today so I can help you navigate through those troubled waters and gain back control of your life. You can book a reading today. Just visit me at lovelotustarot.com. Again, book a reading with me today at lovelotustarot.com. And that's something I want you to kind of think of outside the box coming up with this holiday season. Instead of having to worry about spending tons and tons of money on gifts and stuff that's just going to sit on somebody's shelf and not really appreciate it at all within a month or two, especially kids. You buy them toys and they just want to play with the box, right? Um, but this year, why don't you think outside the box and give the gift of an experience? And what do I mean by that? Well, give the gift of a memory instead of waiting in line, going to the shopping centers and malls to pick out gifts that you're not sure they're going to even like. So then you got to get a gift receipt to return it because they probably won't like it or they just want the gift card from the store. But give the gift of an experience. If you know somebody that's been having a hard time, that's been talking about wanting a tarot reading or something like that, give them a tarot reading. Just email me and just say, hey, I purchased this tarot reading for a friend of mine for a birthday gift or a Christmas gift or whatever. And give that gift an experience for them to take with them, have a memory, have an experience, insight, something that can uplift them, they could benefit from. It's a gift with purpose. That's what it is. So I always tell people, think outside the box when it comes to gifts, especially when it's so hard to buy for people like Dave. He's horrible at buying gifts because every time he mentions something he wants, he just goes and buys it. I hear it and then I go buy it and then we're double gifting. So it's just like I give up. But there are other things. So if you have a friend, family member, even yourself that are have been thinking about having a tarot reading, reach out to me at lovelotustarot.com. You could book a reading there. And if you are booking it for a friend, just email me on the side or message me and just say, hey, I purchased this and I just need their name so I know who I'm talking to and know who to send the link to. But yeah, it's a wonderful experience. And, it's not that hard on the pocketbook. $30 for 30 minutes for me. It's not expensive. But if you do have a little bit higher taste in gift ideas and you want an experience, have you been on the fence about ghost hunting? Well, here's your chance. Or do you have a friend that's like, oh, I want to go ghost hunting so bad. I just never get a chance to go. Well, here's your chance. And you can gift it to somebody. Because on May 21st through the 24th, we are going to be at the historic Palmer House Hotel for the Paranormal Mysteries Part 2. We just did it back here in August. It was sold out. We had a blast. It'll be Shane Pittman from the Holzer Files, Cindy Kaza from the Holzer Files, and Dave Schrader from the Holzer Files. And now they're on their new hit series on Beacon TV, The Paranormal Mystery Show. So if you didn't get a chance to come out and see them back this year, we will be there again next year. It's the trifecta of all paranormal. You're getting the full trio that put teams on the map with Holzer Files and Paranormal Mysteries. Dave, Shane, and Cindy work so well together. So here is your chance to experience it. Click the link in today's description for the event, the Paranormal Mysteries event. Again, it's May 21st through the 24th of 2026 at the historic Palmer House Hotel. There'll be ghost hunts, presentation, gallery readings, and so much more. And I'll be there doing tarot readings. So come on out, enjoy, have fun. And if you know somebody that's been wanting to do this their whole life, give them the gift this Christmas of the experience of ghost hunting with the best of the best. You can't go wrong with that. So let's get back into the story, shall we? Now, this one can go either way because we're also dealing with nature, elements, bad weather, all sorts of stuff. But the Mount Rainier disappearances and UFO flaps. So let's head over to the West Coast to Washington State and kind of dig into the forests and the foothills of Mount Rainier and see what's going on over there. Now, Mount Rainier has always been a beautiful but never harmless mountain. Locals will tell you the mountain has moods, shifting, shadowed things that breathe through the forest and can swallow a person whole without leaving a trace. But in the 1920s, something darker began to simmer around the snow-capped giant, something that couldn't be explained by weather, wildlife, or the wilderness itself. People started just disappearing, quietly at first, one hiker, then another. A trapper who knew every inch of the valley, a climber whose rope was found neatly coiled at the base of the ridge. Search parties combed the slopes, but sometimes there weren't enough footprints to follow. Just a story cut short and a life that evaporated into the thin mountain air. By the 1940s, the disappearances had become a whisper running through the the ranger stations, and climbing camps. Something was happening on Rainier. Something no one could name out loud. Then came that summer day in 1947. Pilot Kenneth Arnold was flying past Mount Rainier when he saw something impossible. 9 disc-shaped craft gliding across the sky with sharp mechanical precision. They moved like stones skipping over the water. He radioed in, voice shaking, and his report went national. And just like that, Mount Rainier became ground zero for America's first modern UFO sighting. But Arnold's encounter wasn't an isolated incident. It was the moment when everything suddenly clicked. Rangers began revisiting old cold case files. Climbers recalled strange lights on foggy nights. Campers admitted they had heard mechanical humming high above the tree lines before anyone said the word saucer. The disappearance began to look less random, less human, and more like a pattern. Throughout the late 1940s and into the 1950s, the mountain lit up with activity. Bright orbs weaving through the valleys, metallic objects hovering over the southern slopes, silent crafts that moved against the wind, beams of white light cutting through the clouds. Some nights, the sky above Rainier looked like a battlefield of lights no one could identify. And as the sightings increased, so did the vanishings. Several experienced climbers disappeared on a clear weather days, leaving behind half-packed gear. A forest ranger vanished from a patrol route he walked hundreds of times. Only his hat was found, resting perfectly upright on the trail. Families who camped near the tree line reported waking to strange humming noises, their tents glowing faintly blue from outside. Children spoke of shiny people walking between the trees. The government brushed it off as misidentification, hysteria, weather balloons, anything but what people were actually seeing like usual. But privately, investigators visited the area and Air Force personnel quietly interviewed witnesses. Files vanished, reports went missing. And Mount Rainier kept its secrets. Today, the disappearances of the 1920s through the 50s remain officially unexplained. But locals have a different word for it. They call Rainier a window, a place where something slips in and out of our world, where hikers walk into the trees and never come out, where the sky flickers with lights that aren't planes, where the mountain watches you back. And if you ask the old-timers about it, they'll tell you the same thing. People don't just get lost on Rainier. Sometimes they're taken. Now, this was an oldie but goodie, but I can't talk about this topic without talking about Mothman. So we're going to go to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and we're going to talk about Mothman and the Silver Bridge collapse. Point Pleasant, West Virginia was a kind, quiet river town where nothing truly strange ever happened until November of 1966, when the first sighting hit like a lightning bolt. 2 young couples were driving through the old TNT area, an abandoned World War II munitions site, all broken concrete domes, overgrown brush, when their headlights caught something standing in the road. It was tall, broad-shouldered, with wings folded tightly behind its back, and its eyes burning a fierce, impossible red, locked onto the car like it was choosing to stare it down. The creature unfolded its wings with a leathery snap and launched straight into the air, chasing them at speeds no bird, no animal, no human should be capable of. Only when they reached the edge of the town did it vanish into the sky like smoke swallowed by darkness. Locals laughed at first, but then the calls started. Hundreds of calls. People across Point Pleasant reported something in the skies. A winged figure perched on rooftops, glowing red eyes watching from cornfields, a massive silent shape gliding above the Ohio River, creatures landing on cars and leaving scratches deep and wide. The newspapers called him Mothman. The residents whispered a different word, omen. And then the men in black arrived. Not the Hollywood kind. These were cold, emotionless men in black suits who knocked on doors asking about the creature, confiscating photos, threatening witnesses with bizarre warnings that your memories are incorrect. UFOs, strange lights, telepathic nightmares. Point Pleasant became a pressure cooker of fear and paranoia. And beneath it all, the thing kept appearing. Always watching, never attacking, as if waiting for something. And that something arrived on December 15th of 1967. It was rush hour on the Silver Bridge, a 700-foot steel span connecting West Virginia to Ohio, crowded with the holiday shoppers heading home early for Christmas. No one knows the exact moment the first steel eye-bar snapped, but witnesses say the sound was like a gunshot that echoed across the water. Then the entire bridge folded in half like a toy made of matchsticks. Cars plunged into the freezing river. People were trapped in twisted steel, calling for help. They couldn't reach for them in time. 46 lives lost in the collapse that lasted less than 60 seconds. But here's the part that made the town shudder. Multiple survivors claim they saw a massive, dark-shaped creature perched on the bridge moments before it fell, red eyes glowing through the winter haze. Others reported a winged figure soaring above the river as rescue crews arrived. And more than a dozen witnesses said the Mothman sighting stopped immediately after that bridge collapsed. Official investigators blamed a failed eye bar, a flaw in the metal, fatigue, corrosion. But in Point Pleasant, the explanation has never been so simple. People believe the Mothman wasn't there to kill, but he was there to warn, a harbinger of catastrophe, a creature that appears before disaster strikes and vanishes once fate has taken its toll. Some say the Silver Bridge collapse wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. Because ever since 1967, the same winged figure has been reported all over the world before plane crashes, mine disasters, and industrial failures. Like an omen that travels with tragedy, a watcher, a messenger, or something darker that understands fate better than we do. And in Point Pleasant, the question still lingers like fog over the Ohio River. Was the Mothman trying to save them? Or was he just simply bearing witness? Yeah, I love the Mothman encounters. I mean, they still happen today. There's some reports that they saw a Mothman like creature on 9/11. Some say it was in Chicago, I believe, on 9/11. So they thought maybe Chicago could have been like the Sears Tower could have been a target. And some even say, I believe that he may have been spotted in New York on 9/11. So there might be something to this Mothman being like a harbinger, like kind of how they say ravens and crows are. You know, if a raven shows up solo and follows you, that means death is coming. So there could be something to it. Who knows? It's still an interesting story. And I've been to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and I've seen the bridge, and it's a cool part of history. I mean, it's not cool that people died, but it's a rich part of our history that even without Mothman, it's still interesting to learn about. But I think it's kind of cool to tie in some of these cryptid creatures because maybe it might even get kids to understand history better and learn better. I mean, I would rather hear about a bridge collapse with a Mothman flying around being an omen. Sounds way cooler. Now this next one, this just happened back in 2000, so 25 years ago. It's not that far off when you think about it. God, I graduated in 2000. Wow, been out of high school for 25 years. That's insane. But what's crazy is this story right here. Honubby Siege in Oklahoma back in 2000. So let's take a look at this one. Deep in the Kiamchi Mountains, the small community of Honubby is the kind of place where the nights get so dark you can't see your hand in front of your face. People keep to themselves. Everyone knows the woods have a personality, moody, unpredictable, and alive. But nothing prepared the Taylor family for the nights the forest pushed back. It began with noises, heavy footsteps circling the property after midnight, low guttural breaths near the window, something brushing up against the siding like a hand or a paw, or something else entirely. They thought it was a black bear at first, maybe a cougar. The mountains have plenty of predators. Then the rocks started. Small stones at first, tapping against the tin roof, then larger ones, thudding, deliberate, almost rhythmic. Not tossed by an animal, thrown with intention. The family armed themselves. Night after night, the noises grew bolder. They heard multiple sets of footsteps pacing just beyond the tree line. Too heavy, too coordinated to be wildlife. Eyes bright, reflective, unnervingly high off the ground, watched them from the darkness. And then came the scream. A shrill, primal roar that ripped through the night and froze the blood of everyone inside the cabin. It didn't sound human. It didn't sound like any animal they ever heard of. It sounded wrong, like something ancient trying to communicate. The Taylors called relatives for help, and soon several men armed with rifles camped on the property, ready to fight. That's when the siege truly began. For hours, the creatures surrounded the cabin, tall, shadowy figures moving between trees with impossible speed. They could hear them communicating in low, chattering tones. Rocks slammed against the roof. Something rattled the doorknob, testing it and testing them. Only the men fired a warning shot. Silence followed. Then movement. Fast, deliberate, flanking the property from both sides. More gunshots erupted. They swore they hit at least one of the creatures. But there was no blood, no body, just deep, angry bellows echoing through the woods. By sunrise, the attackers were gone. The family reported everything. Deputies shrugged. Neighbors whispered they weren't the first to experience this. Hunters in the area have reported massive, hair-covered silhouettes moving upright through the forest. Strange tracks, too large to be human, too wide to be a bear, had been photographed for years. Locals called them the woods people, but the Taylors called it something else. A siege. They moved away not long after that. Well, same, I would too. Too traumatized to say. Well, of course. Too unnerved to ever even look back. Oh, hell no. But in Honabi, on a quiet autumn night, when the wind cuts low and the forest goes still, people say they can still hear the rocks tapping against the old tin roofs, and the distant screams of something that sounds almost human, but not quite. Whatever surrounded that cabin that night, whatever watched, stalked, and tested them, it never left. Yeah, that would be very unnerving while you're sitting in your cabin or in your house and you have boulders being chucked at your property. That's not, yeah, bears don't do that. The only thing that would do that is something with hands and arms that would know what throwing even means. Now, this cryptid crime is bizarre, not only because it happened 50 years ago, but then there was a copycat one that happened after that. Cryptids are copycatting each other now? Well, we're going to take a look at the Hopkinsville Goblin Siege in Kelly, Kentucky in 1955. It was supposed to be an ordinary summer night in rural Kentucky, humid, slow, and quiet enough to hear the rustle of the cornfields. Inside the Sutton farmhouse, friends and family gathered around the card table, laughing, smoking, trying to beat the heat. But at around 7 p.m., the night cracked open. Billy Ray Taylor burst through the door, white as chalk, swearing he had just seen something streak across the sky and crash into a ravine nearby. Something glowing, metallic, and wrong. No one believed them, not at first. But then the dog started growling, low, relentless, and terrified. When the men stepped outside to investigate, they saw it, a small creature, 3 feet tall, emerging from the tree line. Silvery skin, oversized luminous eyes, long spindly limbs ending in claw-like fingers, ears that rose like sharp points. And the way it moved, it didn't walk, it glided, as if the ground even barely mattered. Then another one appeared, and then another. The creatures circled the house, creeping closer, their huge eyes reflecting moonlight like mirrors. With every step they took, the family took one back, until fear snapped like a trap. The guns came out. Shotgun blasts tore through the night, but every time a creature was hit, it didn't fall. It didn't bleed. It didn't even flinch. The sounds were too wrong, metallic pings like bullets striking a steel bucket. Hours turned into paranoia, windows shattered, claws scraped at the roof. A creature reached down over the eaves, its hand curling toward the window like it meant to take someone. Oh my God, this is like the movie Gremlins. Inside, the children screamed. The siege lasted until dawn. Gunfire, shadows, glowing eyes, inhuman movements, and then, as the sun rose, the creatures melted back into the woods, gone, silent, vanished. When the police arrived, they found bullet holes everywhere, terrified witnesses, and damage that backed up the story. Officers admitted they'd never seen animals or anything behave like that. But they found no bodies, no blood, no tracks that made sense. Just a cold feeling in the trees. And silence that didn't feel empty. It felt watchful. But to this day, it's one of the most credible mass witness UFO encounters ever recorded. But the story doesn't end in 1955, because the goblins come back. That's right. In 2012, the Kentucky copycat Return of the Goblins. This sounds like it can be a movie franchise like Gremlins. Seriously, maybe that's where they got the inspiration for Gremlins. Who knows? 57 years later, in 2012, a young man living not far from the original Sutton farmhouse called police in a panic. He said something was stalking his home, something small, gray, and fast. At first, no one took him seriously. Then he sent photos, blurry, dark, but unmistakable. A small creature crouched near his shed, its body thin and pale, its eyes reflecting the camera flash like twin burners. It clung to the wood with long, claw-like hands and appeared to be smiling. It wasn't an animal, it was not human, something in between. The calls escalated over the next week. The man reported tapping on his windows at night, scratching on the roof, soft, high-pitched chirps outside his bedroom. The police checked the property multiple times. Nothing unusual, until the night the deputies arrived and the creatures were waiting for them. It darted across the edge of the cruiser headlights, too fast, too smooth, too deliberate. One officer swore its limbs bent the wrong way. Another said it had no hair, no clothing, just glistening gray skin stretched over narrow bones. They fired at it. The creature dropped, then sprang up again, unfazed, disappeared into the tree line with impossible speed. Sound familiar? The officer, shaken and unwilling to stay longer than necessary, wrote the same observations the Suttons had reported back in 1955. Shots seemed to have no effect on these creatures. More sightings followed in the area over the next month. Small humanoid figures peering into the porches, crouching near barns, watching from treetops, just like in 1955. And then, just as abruptly they reappeared, they were gone. No tracks, no bodies, no further calls. The case was buried as a misidentification, the same explanation stamped onto the Sutton family's hair half a century earlier. But the locals in Kelly, Kentucky still whisper,
They never left. They just waited for someone else to notice them.
ew, ew, ew. Can you, oh God, these little green guys or gray guys running all over the place, and they're acting like they want to kill you. Oh, that sounds like a horror movie. It's Gremlins, and I love Gremlins, and they're coming out with the third one. I'm so excited. I'm gonna live my childhood all over again. But yeah, these little goblin type alien things, whatever those things were, yeah, you can just go. You don't bring your gnarly, long, tentacly looking fingers and grabbing my stuff. Nasty. Get your gross fingers off of it. No, this one is like kind of gives that really uneasy creep factor. Especially being a woman, we have issues with men stalking, that uncertainty if you feel safe because you have a stalker. Well, if you could imagine if it was an alien stalking you, how would that make you feel? Well, we're going to find out with the Berlin alien stalker case in Germany in 2009. Berlin is a city that never truly sleeps. But in the winter of 2009, the district of Krusenberg felt different, colder, quieter, as if the darkness itself was holding its breath. That's when the first calls came in to the local police station. A woman claimed someone or something was watching her from outside her fourth-floor apartment window. When officers arrived, the narrow street below was empty. No ladder, no footprints in the fresh snow. Just a terrified woman insisting that a face, long, pale, and impossible, had been pressing up against the glass. They wrote it off as a late-night panic episode until the second call, and then the third. Within a week, multiple residents reported a strange figure lurking outside the neighborhood. Tall, thin, moving silent, its limbs slightly too long, its head slightly too large. No one ever saw it walk away. Only appeared at the edges of alleys, stairwells, or rooftops, watching with unblinking black eyes. Then came the videos. A pair of college students posted grainy phone footage showing a figure standing on a balcony rail 3 stories high, motionless, silhouetted against the streetlight glow. When they shouted, it didn't flinch. When they approached to get a closer shot, it slipped backward over the edge as if gravity didn't even apply. Police investigated. They found no body in the courtyard below, no blood, no impact site, no explanation. Residents began describing strange sounds at night, metallic clicking echoing through the stairwells, soft electrical buzzing beneath the door frames, footsteps that stopped just outside apartments but never knocked. One man told investigators he woke up to see a figure standing at the foot of his bed. Tall, smooth skin, its eyes glossy and reflective like wet stone. He froze, unable to scream, unable to move. The figure leaned in close, studying him like an insect under glass. And then suddenly and quickly as it appeared, it dissolved into the dim corner of the room and vanished. When officers questioned him, the man shook uncontrollably. "This wasn't a person," he whispered. "It wasn't even human." Authorities quickly escalated the case. Unmarked vehicles began showing up in the neighborhood. Plainclothes investigators knocked on doors asking for videos, photos, or descriptions, then confiscated everything they deemed sensitive. Residents said they saw men sweeping alleyways with equipment that hummed like medical machines. Others claimed they saw a stretcher being loaded onto a van in the early morning hours with something long and shrouded under a metallic sheet. Officially, nothing was recovered. Unofficially, the story got stranger. In mid-February 2009, the sightings stopped overnight as if the thing, whatever it was, had abandoned its interest in the neighborhood. Or had it been taken? Police refused to comment, reports vanished, videos were mysteriously removed from the early days of YouTube. A few investigative journalists claimed to have sources who mentioned biological evidence and non-terrestrial morphology, but those articles never saw publication. Today, the Berlin alien stalker case lives in the strange space between urban legend and classified reality. Residents will whisper they weren't dealing with a prowler or a criminal. They were dealing with an intelligence, a scout, maybe even a collector. Something that walked along them for weeks, studying them, stalking them, choosing to follow them, and then disappearing into the cold Berlin night as if it had never been there at all. Yeah, I mean, it's bad enough like going into a parking garage at night when you're a woman all by yourself. It is unnerving just to do that. But can you imagine if you saw something that wasn't even human? I honestly, I don't know how I'd react to that. I think I'd be more scared of a real man than I would be an alien, because I know what humans can do. That I do know. Now, I wanted to save this story for last because this one's really interesting. I love Sasquatch. I love the theory of Bigfoot, that he's real. You know, in my opinion, could he be some type of supernatural creature that can be bounce between dimensions? That one's a little far-fetched for me. To me, I would feel he's more of just another type of primate that we didn't know about. I mean, we didn't know about gorillas till like 200 years ago. I mean, can you imagine seeing a gorilla for the first time? What is that? You know, it would look like a hairy human. Sasquatch is the world champion of hide and seek. I mean, come on, you got to give the guy credit. Nobody can catch him. He's good at tag, apparently, too.
You know, my darklings, in my house, I'm the one who's impossible to shop for. For every birthday, every holiday, my wife and kids are always asking, what do you want this year? And they never know the right answer to tell them. But this year I knew exactly what I wanted for my birthday. I told them, get me cozy earth, and they did. And let me tell you, these are the best pajamas I've ever owned. Hands down, this isn't some sales pitch. This is me your Darkling leader, telling you that if you want the most comfortable set of pajamas you've ever worn, that bamboo pajama set made from viscose from bamboo, it drapes perfectly, sleeps cooler than cotton, which is great for a heavy, hot sleeper like I am, and it feels like something you should only be allowed to wear on vacation. I put them on once and immediately thought, well, this is it. This is what I'm wearing for the rest of my life. But the real game changer, the bubble cuddle blanket. And Darklings, I'm going to tell you again, hands down, the most amazing, soft, warm, comfortable blanket. It's the perfect weight that just settles over you. And I genuinely don't need another blanket ever again, unless it's another bubble cuddle blanket. My family keeps trying to steal it, which tells you everything you need to know. And here's the best part. Cozy Earth backs this comfort with up to a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty. Who else does that? Nobody. That's who else. So if you've got someone hard to shop for, or maybe you are that someone hard to shop for, this is your moment. Black Friday through Cyber Monday, Cozy Earth is giving you 40% off at CozyEarth.com with my code P60. It's their best deal of the year. Again, get 40% off Black Friday through Cyber Monday at CozyEarth.com with my code P60. And if you get that post-purchase survey, tell them you heard about Cozy Earth right here on the Paranormal 60. Wrap the ones you love and yourself in luxury with Cozy Earth.
But this story, I think, is pretty interesting. We're going to Mount St. Helens for the Bigfoot bodies from 1980. When Mount St. Helens erupted on May 18, 1980, the world saw a natural disaster. A mountain ripped open, a blast wave that flattened forests, ash clouds that turned daylight into dust. But according to the whispers from the people who were there, loggers, rescue workers, soldiers, not everything buried underneath ash was human. In the weeks after the eruption, the mountains was locked down. Officially, it was for safety. Unstable terrain, toxic air, unpredictable seismic activity. One group recalled being told bluntly,
"This area is federal now. You're done. Go home."
The military moved in, quite efficient, not talking to anyone. That's where the rumors began. Workers claim they weren't just recovering human victims. They described massive fur-covered bodies, charred but unmistakably shaped like an upright, broad-shouldered humanoid. Some said that they were laid out under tarps. Others claimed that they were carried away in nets, lifted into the helicopters like heavy cargo the government didn't want anyone to identify. One eyewitness, a former National Guardsman, spoke years later under anonymity. He said he saw two bodies, large ape-like but with proportions too human. Their hands were massive, their faces were elongated, expressive, almost peaceful despite the destruction around them. Whatever those things were, he said, they weren't bears, and they sure as hell weren't people. The implication was chilling. Whatever those things were, he said, they weren't bears, and they sure as hell weren't people. The implication was chilling. If Bigfoot existed, the eruption had exposed them, killed them, and the government buried the evidence along with everything else under that mountain. Officials, of course, denied everything. No bodies, no creatures, no classified recovery operations. But then there was the other strange details. Military officers giving orders not to speak. Trucks leaving the blast zone at night. Biologists flown in by a helicopter and flown out the same day, refusing to answer questions. A memo referencing non-human remains quickly marked, restricted, and never seen again. To locals, it was confirmation of what they already believed. Something lived in those deep Pacific Northwest woods long before humans did. Something that avoided us, survived beside us, and died with us that day on that mountain. Some say few survived the blast, fleeing deeper into the untouched wilderness. Hunters still report massive footprints around the Guilford National Forest area. Campers hear howls that don't match any known animal. When the wind whistles over the volcanic plains, long after the dust settles and silence takes over, you can almost imagine the creatures that once roamed there. hidden from the world until the mountain blew their secret wide open, then disappeared again behind government tape, ash, and silence. I mean, that's the true crime here is all this government cover-up stuff. If you want to say Bigfoot exists, just say he exists. But I understand that if you do say exists, then you're probably going to get all the nutballs with the AK-47s and want to go out hunting to find the damn thing. I think if he is found, treat him as wildlife. He obviously is an endangered species. So if you do encounter a Bigfoot, don't shoot it. Just admire it from a distance. There is a personal boundary that you just don't cross with a Sasquatch. You know, he stays over in your area and you can watch from afar. I mean, it would be awesome to see one in the wilderness, but I wouldn't try and chase it down or capture it. No, from a distance, just like it is at a zoo. Just picture it being in a zoo. Well, thank you guys so much for such an awesome episode this week. I love these kind of stories because it does make you think outside the box that could these things cause these issues? Could there be crimes where it was actually caused by a cryptid or an alien or something and somebody else was, framed for it and is in jail for a crime that a human didn't even commit? Can you imagine? But yeah, it's just kind of cool how these cases come about and the kind of the lore and the legend. But like that goblin case, there was a copycat one that came back to terrorize more families. Like I said, it's like movies and sequels. It's just but and it's kind of cool too that you see a lot of similarities within these stories as well. So, like I said, if you guys have any stories that you've heard of, so weird cryptid cases where somebody was kidnapped or abducted and brought back or found murdered and the circumstances don't seem humanly possible, email me. I'd love to hear about those stories. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And I want you guys to have a wonderful holiday season. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving and happy holidays. I hope to see you all next week. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. And until our next case, my armchair detectives, stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay aware. I'll see you right here next week on Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot.